No one leaves. Not you or anyone else.
Well, Kyle, we've made it to the Harshafont moment of Stormblood, which means we've made it through the many, many intros of Stormblood. Is it sacrilege to admit that I probably would have just skimmed/skipped most of the dialogue up till Yanxia?
Sacrilege? Casual blasphemy, perhaps? It can't be that. It can't be that unknown. There is probably a silent group, a larger group, that does exactly that. Waits until something catches them. An MMO doesn't have choices like Baldur's Gate, Dragon Age, any of these. In those games, those factions audition to you as the player to see if you're interested. In an MMO here, you're following the script.
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, when we did our first Stormblood video where we get to Xenos sacking Ralgard's Reach, there were a lot of comments after the fact that's like, oh, you're not done with the introduction. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. There's probably like one more. And like, boy, Stormblood really doesn't get going until damn near the end of the .0 stuff. Because now it seems like it's really going. We've got momentum. We've got major character moments. But getting there, boy, it takes its sweet time. I've heard so many things, right, dude? Like the big one that sticks out of my mind right now is that it was supposed to be 2 expansions. And I feel that.
I don't really need that excuse. To me, it's a home-cooked meal, and you got to do a lot of chopping. Right now, we're kind of at the point where, like, we're tasting the soup. We're kind of getting in there. We're giving a little sip. We're saying, oh, ooh, that's nice. But I'm still eager to know that all these pieces are used, that all the sides and the desserts are all going to come together. I do not mind a slow start. In fact, I really liked a lot of this, but you got to use it.
To the best of my ability, I almost want to talk about like Kugane and Ruby C together, because for me, these did feel like additional intros. But this was to me the slog of Stormblood. I was ready to be done with these areas.
Oh, how dare you besmirch the name of Kugane? That's the politics that I actually care about.
I couldn't tell you if I care about it because I retained none of it.
It was imperialism. It was a nation taken over by commerce and mercantilism and embassies that had taken up root inside a very classical city.
Oh, nothing more exciting than embassies. I can't wait to roll an ambassador for my next Dungeons & Dragons campaign.
It's one thing when they're just like MMO characters just standing around in a bunch of tents in a circle. Like, I don't care about your emissaries in that way, or even a throne room setting that just happens to have a couple of characters splashed between this. This was about the visual storytelling of architecture, and it was really effective. And then you got over there the Garlean embassy, which is that evil overlord tile set sitting right in the middle of things, and it made for a very oppressive atmosphere alongside the Setsugume, the secret police.
This is unfair. You're trying to win a debate by playing to my deep love of Epcot, which is objectively boring and yet my favorite Disney park.
And it's delicious eventually, right, when you get to the food inside. But looking from the outside, you might wonder where are all the rides. They're there.
That's exactly it. Yeah, Kugane, dude, I love Ishgard. Go back to those Heavensward videos. I love that city. Kugane might be cooler. Like, I'm gonna, like, come back to me on this. I need more time to think about this. Kugane is one of the coolest cities I have ever seen in an MMO. For me, like, Kugane is also, like, it's starting on the back foot because the Siren Song Sea dungeon, right before we get there, is freaking amazing. What a god-tier dungeon. And then you get to Kugane, and it's like, well, time to listen to Hancock talk.
A legitimate concern?
Hancock is a nerd. He's an outsider telling you the story of a city with a very rich history in his own way.
He is the longer-winded version of Khadgar's assistant from Shatrath. He is just there to give you a tour.
But it was a tour in his outsider style, which is what made it so interesting.
It was interesting?
Yeah, because he was breaking down the entire political atmosphere, and it was at this point that I realized we were going to be seeing a multi-staged approach to the Garlean occupation. What we had in Rhalgr's Reach was the Civil War kind of style uprising, a light rebellion going on there, but still kind of in that early phase. And then we get to Kugane, which is all about the economic takeover and how the Garleans insert themselves into society and make themselves important enough. They force trade upon a people, force their way into a city. And when we get to Yanxia and Doma, that is like prolonged occupation. Like we are breaking down visually and in storytelling how the Garleans do their business. Whether it's full-blown oppression, guards at your door, beating citizens in the streets, or making yourself essential. Hancock was not the guy I wanted to hear it from, but it's the guy that you would hear it from.
I just didn't want to hear it. I wanted to see it. And we do see it, which is why I thought it was weird that we also had to hear about it.
What about the hostess who was like missing an eye and telling you if she shared any information, she was going to like tell it to other people and sell it off? Or hey, even Alphino and his amazing drawing skills.
Hey, that stuff was great. That stuff I did like. That to me was, particularly the hostess was like Game of Thrones when it was good. It was a good kind of cloak and dagger. Before, Thrones jumped the shark.
We got to meet a catfish person. That was nice.
We did get to meet a catfish. I love the catfish people. The Matsu.
Yeah, he had a great bell. The stealth section was functional. That was a cute. It was very cute. Stormblood's trying out some new things.
Then now this one's unfair because I played more of the game. But at the moment in the game when we played through that the Matsu stealth solo duty, I thought it was pretty cool and unique. Now we've been through quite a few solo duties at this point in Stormblood, and that one's probably my least favorite now. But it doesn't mean I think it's bad. I actually did rather enjoy it. I just think compared to the other solo duties we've done, it's probably the least consequential. But whatever, I'm fine with the gameplay there. It's Final Fantasy. There's a lot of cinematics. You need to break it up with gameplay bits. It worked for me.
I'm making you linger in Kugane because I liked it so much with the bathhouse and the inn and all the places to explore and the characters and the streets. And I really fell in love with the city. I thought it was a fascinating atmosphere. Ruby Sea was rough. A horribly inconvenient place to explore. When you arrived on the boat, you immediately end up on some castle in the sea. You're like, all right, let's go. And they just want you to swim. And they want you to get to swimming, and they want you to feel that swimming be bad.
Honestly, that part didn't bother me too much. I've really fallen in love with so many of the characters in this game and the storytelling of this game. And so when we meet the Confederates and it's just like another group that's like, hey, go do some MMO quests for us because we don't want to fight for you because nobody wants to fight for you in Stormblood. Stormblood : no one wants to fight for you. That's how this MMO feels. That's where the Ruby Sea fell apart for me. I was just like, wow, I just don't care about these pirates. It was such a breath of fresh air when Yotsuyu shows up. Let's go.
Filth and squalor everywhere I look. How very Doma.
But she does take away Gotsetsu at that point. So I thought we were going to be enjoying questing with Gotsetsu.
Excuse me. Gotsetsu takes himself away.
Yes, and he gets horribly beaten, as we find out later. Yotsuyu is very well done. And I almost say that in a tired way because I don't want to care about her backstory. Well done, game. That's how you make a villain. Yes, you give them a horrible childhood and they become horrible people. Thank you for the truth of life there.
You can't be mad at the game, Kyle. You have to just be mad at the realities of the world.
That's fair. And she was very real in that way. And she herself was terrified of her overlord and trying to project her own character that she was so evil. And inside, she's actually a scared little girl. And it totally works. And she's a lot of fun. I mean, she is not quite the back of the hand laugh type, but this is the crazy eye villain archetype that we haven't really had yet.
She's very Azula energy if you're a Last Airbender fan, which I am. I am a Last Airbender fan, and I'm a big Azula fan. So I loved Yotsuyu, and Yotsuyu brought this very much needed big garnish of interest into the middle of the Ruby Sea. However, oh boy, does it end on a revelrous note.
Who hath made us whole?
This was the highest production quality we've seen so far. This was when the TV show got funding. The cameras varied: camera 1, camera 2, Alizé, Lise. And that was fine. It was fun questing with people of action, which their action was to make us do side quests. So
the Ruby Sea is like the 30 episodes of Goku charging up the Spirit Bomb. Susanoo is when he finally goes Super Saiyan.
And we met the turtle people, which get called shellbacks, which is kind of weird, but they seem okay with it, but they're actually not turtles.
They're not turtles. They are actually wearing found shells, hunted
Yes.
shells, procured shells. I'm not sure how they get those shells. I have a lot of questions about those shells.
It seems a little weird.
Yeah, we could just wear shells. I hadn't thought about that. What's
Right.
going on? What's going on, Kojin?
I have no idea, but they bless us with magical underwater flying powers, and it goes along, and we do a fabulous optional dungeon that we'll talk about in a Wall of Dungeons sometime. But eventually, we finally start like scaling up. Things are getting exciting, and we head into our first trial, our Ravana of Stormblood, and it is a production. It is a unique take on Primal so far, being more summoned forth willingly by objects regathering. Bringing enough ether together to summon him forth, and he just wants to party. He is the Lord of Revels. He has fabulous quotes. What an amazing, you could call it a quick time event. It sounds trite when you do it that way. Catching the sword is so cool that it's a shame it doesn't happen 8 times so everyone gets to do it.
Yeah, a huge thanks to our community because they were like, hey, let Garrett and Kyle do the thing. We're like, what's the thing? They're like, shh, just do it. We're like, okay, and then there's the thing, and you can do it, and then, yeah, you block that. So you could call it a quick time event. It is a boss mechanic. You need to block this attack, and they've done an amazing job at building that in as this really important mechanic of the fight, and it becomes also just a visual set piece. It is an absolute feast for the eyes. Is Susanoo the coolest boss fight so far? This is something we don't do on the wall because we have the Wall of Trials and we have the Wall of Dungeons, right? And we haven't even started the Wall of like raids. There's an end fight in Sky Pirates. I think might be the best boss fight. The final Alexander fight might be the best boss fight, and this might be the best boss. Those are the 3 in my head that are battling each other for which one that I like the most.
It was stupid cool. It was absolutely awesome.
And by virtue of Susanoo alone, I can't in good conscience dump on Ruby Sea too much. I can't do it. Susanoo is so good that I forgive the Confederates for being the most boring pirates I've ever come across in Final Fantasy. So leaving Susanoo is where the pirates got okay for me. I didn't love them, but the bigger... I didn't really get that we were setting out to collect allies until this point. You come out of Susanoo, eventually you make it to where Yotsuyu is keeping Gosetsu, and we get this big cinematic, this big reveal that we have finally moved the Confederates to action. And I was like, oh, I get it now. It's Mass Effect 2. So this is where, for me, to be honest, I felt a little dumb. I didn't really get that we were putting allies together.
And I can only imagine the reason you missed that was because you didn't like Kugane and Hancock, because that's basically what he said.
No, I didn't. Where Stormblood really clicked for me, where I got emotionally invested, was Yanxia. I was a sucker for Issei and trying to be a good big brother, and the plight of the locals not wanting to fight, and eventually just getting to that point where they realize they have to take up arms. It was like classic Star Wars Rebellion, but where they really explored what a difficult choice it is to forsake safety in pursuit of like actual liberty.
It also introduced some sympathy for the lowly soldiers of the Garlean army, because many of them are conscripts. Many of them are taken from these very villages and put in rather great looking but evil armor for this expansion.
Oh, I'm totally gonna make a glamour out of that. That armor is too cool.
And they don't really want to be there either. Well, some of them are pretty into it. Some of them are really into oppressing others. But this is where things finally got personal. Questing alongside Yagiri made it that much more real, because She wanted to be a person of action. She wanted to immediately sweep in, inspire, save, attack these people, but she always had to hold back. She had to put the guards to sleep instead of actually assaulting the base. She was just looking for her master in hopes that she could rally these people. But the whole way through, the game is teasing you, continually teasing you with that. And up to this point, the Warrior of Light just kind of beats up whoever they want. Everyone's into the Warrior of Light. And finally, we're realizing that our style is not going to work here. But still, Yagiri's into it. She's like, you know what? Let's go attack Xenos. And I am so there. I am so into it. I need my rematch. This came at a perfect beat. And I was super excited to face him down. But the game, again, played with you. It was like, oh, is he gonna betray you? And I 100% expected him to. I expect him to show up and be like, Lord Xenos, oh, the people, and then just get struck down and he'd be like, weak. And that would be that. But instead, they were inspired. They showed up. We dealt a blow. We broke his helmet a little bit, but still, we showed Xenos wasn't invincible.
Yeah, also that, he's smart enough to retreat.
My lord?
Yeah, or at least walk away.
Yeah, he's tactical on top of being a formidable opponent. A lot of people like to talk about how I feel like a popular opinion is that Lys isn't an interesting character, or that Xenos isn't a very good villain. And
that's blasphemy.
I don't get it, right?
That's sacrilege.
Dude, I don't get it at all. I really like Lys. Everything happening in Stormblood is so thick. I think there's a little too much. There's too many individual peoples and cultures and countries to go through and understand. And to me, it's almost a compliment. I do mean this in a somewhat complimentary way. It's like they're so fleshed out, it is a little much to absorb. So Lys is this lovely, more simplified character. She's our audience insert. She understands Giribani. She doesn't have a clue what's going on in the East. This is all new to her, and seeing it through her eyes and her oversimplification of everything that's going on is a nice opposition to the density of everything else that's happening in Stormblood. I think Xenos kind of fits that as well. Xenos is this very classical villain who lives for the fight. He lives for a worthy opponent while also being this right bastard that appropriates the culture of his enemies. He's running around with Eastern katanas that are not his. He's stealing them from corpses. That's not the way. That's not a Garlean weapon, and he's bastardized it with Garlean weaponry by infusing these katanas with ether. Dude, I love him. He's great. So far, is he my favorite villain ever? No, but he's really freaking good. I'm really enjoying Xenos. I'm really enjoying Lys. I don't get it. Yes, I agree with the popular opinion that Stormblood starts slow. No, I do not agree that Lys and Xenos are not interesting characters.
A lot of this is just Samurai for me is amazing. The in and out play style you have with your off cooldown abilities with the whole sticker system meant that battling Xenos was a trial, was something that took skill. If I was on my healer, I'd stand in every poop. I'd explode. I'd heal myself. It'd take forever. I'd dot them, wait for that. A lot of that Xenos fight perhaps just comes down to the class, the job you are currently playing, and whether or not it's interesting in a one-on-one duel. But it totally worked. It was an excellent beat. And I loved questing alongside Yagiri.
Well, as you know, her parents are stonemasons.
As we know, as we found out when we met her parents, hey, that step already out of the way. We've met her parents.
It was nice attacking Xenos. I'd love the follow-up where you could tell Yatsuyu is not in a great relationship with her leader. I mean, dude pulls her hair.
Oh, it doesn't even look at her during that, too.
Right? Oh, my God.
What villainy.
What a bastard. He's a great
and she
bastard.
was reduced back down to that little girl and then immediately stands up and starts oppressing again. These are very well written, awful people.
I love a good villain. Yatsuyu falls into that category, and Xenos as well. They're really fun. Name Day I could do without. I was a little sick of him. But, you got to have a lackey. I was surprised how much I enjoyed the Azim Steppe. I felt like we had a lot of momentum coming out of Yanxia. We just had a minor victory against Xenos and a major moral victory, it felt like, in rallying the townsfolk of Yanxia. Really just developing Issei felt like a big win for me, and I felt like I really came out of Yanxia with a lot of momentum. And so stepping into the Azim Steppe, didn't mean to do that. There's a part of my brain that just went, oh no, we're applying the brakes again. Because we very quickly meet the character of Sirena, and she gives us this long explainer of all of the tribes of the Aura. And I was worried for a hot second. But then we meet Hien and immediately start preparing for ritual combat, which I'm always excited about. And it's even better because it's with Hien.
It was a breath of fresh air, and this is another side of that Garlean story. We got to see a land untouched by them. I'm still expecting this whole place to be on fire. In fact, when Name Day walks in at the end, I thought it was all gonna explode, but it didn't quite yet. These people are strong, resilient, and they will not bow. And Hien was instantly likable. For as young of a character he was portraying, I mean, outside of the chin strap, he is a prince. He's a prince.
I've never liked a character
hair.
with a chin strap until Hien.
It works for him. I think it works. He's got some excellent scars, beautifully placed. Gives him a little bit of experience, but not quite enough to, follow him immediately. But you do. He is extremely charismatic. His voice lines are expertly delivered.
You want to talk charismatic? That's Azim Steppe for me. I thought this entire zone, with one major exception in the form of Magni, this entire zone just exudes charisma. I loved Sirena. This felt like the zone where we had we literally had the campfire moment again. So
yeah.
In Heavensward, I love that campfire moment where we're hanging out with Iceheart and Destinian. Alphino's there too, but really I'm into it for the other two characters. We got to really take in our group, our party at this point. Like, you get to a point where I was starting to feel comfortable with Hien and knew him as a character, and we settled down with Sirena's tribe, and we have a literal sequel to the campfire moment for a hot second there. I really liked the character drive of this entire zone. That it felt intimate, but like you said too, it's against this backdrop of the Azim Steppe, which is this untouched zone. This zone that is beautiful. It is a very pretty zone. It looks like a Windows XP wallpaper, for crying out loud. Those are some beautiful green rolling hills.
I don't know if the rocks are supposed to look like aura horns. That would make sense, I guess, if this place was designed by the god and the goddess. There's a lot of lore here.
This was lore that I enjoyed for the most part. There were a couple times where I was like, it's just Magni. Magni was such a. If Xenos is the perfect bastard, Magni is like the bastard that annoyed me.
He was supposed to.
He was. So I mean this was the most minor critique I could levy, but the payoff of beating Magni in the Nadam didn't land. We had to spend so much time doing his MMO fetch quest bidding that I wanted him to be more humiliated at the end of the Nadam.
He was also forced to reset us coming out of Bardam's Medal, where it felt like we had a big success. But instead we get captured and have to follow his rules. And the whole party's like super into it. I guess because they know nothing's bad's going to happen and we might as well hold it off to the Nadam. But I would have left. They sent me down to get seaweed, waterweed, whatever it was. Just leave.
Yeah, that's another minor note. I think the story didn't do the best job of like really selling that our friends were like captives, because it's not till the very end that they show Hien and Lise in an actual jail cell, right? I feel like
but
if
they
they
seem
just
kind of bored in there.
Yeah, if they had just thrown them in a jail cell from the very beginning, it would have been like, okay, I get it. We need to appease Magni, so he lets our friends out. But whatever. To me, this is such a minor note because I love this zone so much. But yeah, in the moment, I was like, I'm done with you, Magni.
It's a Superman in jail kind of moment. Like, I took it as Lise, Hien, like we all could have killed everybody, ran out of there, blown the whole bowl up, and left. But It was more that we were holding back and we were respecting the tradition of the Nadam. So we were going to do what he said and learn about the cultures along the way. And hey, Hien had that mastermind plan in mind that he was going to take over the Nadam and use those forces to go to Doma. So he wanted to know more about the people he was going to lead, earn their respect. And Hien had been here for a long time too. He was saved by the mole, so he was much more ingrained with them and had been living among them for a while. The mole really wanted to rise up and be more than themselves, even though they didn't end up taking the Dawn Throne in the end. Plus, Grandma had a bunch of prophecy words for us, which were written in such a way that it sounds like it's going to be a little 1-for-1 coming up. Like, basically, they're like, did we finish writing Shadowbringers? Yeah, why? I've got this old lady. I'd like her to talk about it. Okay, shoot me some notes. Just shoot them on over. We'll read them off. Like, no glowing eyes, no scary voice, just an old lady in complete calm, which perhaps made it even scarier, telling you your future.
It felt very out of place to me, not necessarily in a bad way, but it's just the Stormblood's story feels so grounded compared to the multiversal story that's going on, like with Heidelin, that started in A Realm Reborn and is still just in the background, but we haven't checked in with it at all so far in Stormblood. So it feels so completely in the back of my mind. To have her just start popping off with this prophecy business, and for it to seem so kind of in-world and like non-magical, where she's just kind of like, oh yes, a single radiant shimmering, let me just tell you about this. It caught me off guard. It felt like it hit me in the center of gravity and kind of set me for a loop. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice. I'm gonna go do the Nadam now.
Before you go, dearie, you are a traveler of light and stars flock to you. And you're like, yeah, well, all right, old lady, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Grandma. I gotta go do my chores now. We'll talk later. I wonder if that becomes our check-in back to the multiversal arc. You know, eventually we end up in yet another solo duty in the Nadam, and like I thought this was more satisfying than the dungeon. Like the Final Fantasy XIV dungeons are weird, man. Like Bardam's Medal was cool, don't get me wrong, but it felt like such a small piece to the overall story of the Azim Steppe. I think I like it. That's not really a critique. I think it's interesting that like Final Fantasy XIV doesn't always save dungeons for the most important story beats. It's just a tool in the tool chest, and sometimes they'll pull it out for something smaller, like getting your mount for the Nadam, which didn't seem like it was that important. I kind of just rode in on it, dismounted, and then never thought about it again.
Nothing made me feel more watched in Stormblood than Bardam's Medal. That was like when your friend hands you the headphones and says, listen to this song, I love it, and you have to sit there for 3 minutes, just awkwardly. I thought Bardam's Medal was kind of boring. It was pretty. It showed off like some interesting ideas about like how bosses could be replaced by like a bunch of traps and trials, but there was nothing really cool to fight in there. And honestly, I thought the whole trial thing was just kind of confusing and boring.
It's a weird one. I look forward to the wall of dungeons for Stormblood when we get there, which will also be short because damn, there aren't a lot of dungeons in this expansion. I digress. The Nadam just ran circles around Bardam's Medal in terms of like feeling impactful and like a major story beat. And also, I couldn't help but think of what was the thing in Heaven's Ward with Sir McHandsome? The Grand Melee. Fighting Raubond was cool. That was it. The rest of the Grand Melee I thought was that was probably the low point for Heaven's Ward for me. I just didn't think it was good. It kind of bored me, and I left it being like, oh, that was it.
You quested across the steppe. The characters were continually pushing you on to keep moving, so there was energy. And when you made it to the objective, where you were going to channel upon the soil, there was actually something to do. And when you got interrupted during that channel, it didn't feel frustrating. It felt like you had to deal with the situation around you, that it was kind of tactical in that way. As it ends, you then join those forces to fight Name Day as he shows up. And so you got to see all that information you've gathered about your enemies, now your allies, take place. The independent duties and trials that you experience in Stormblood have really elevated, and they're way more interesting.
It brings weight through gameplay and not just cinematics, because we went and spent time with each tribe. We met Magni, we met Sadu. I loved Sadu. I loved to hate Magni. So when they show up on the battlefield and we get to throw down with them and they have special attacks and abilities, that's where the weight came from. Afterwards, I still wanted Magni to be a little more like totally having a temper tantrum, but in the moment, actually getting to go fight them in game through gameplay, it's a nice break from the typical moments of weight in Final Fantasy XIV, which comes from cinematics. These solo duties in Stormblood, they're getting good.
We head back to Yanxia, and we're going to formalize the battle. We do a little bit of side quests. We get some armor for the locals. We prepare the battlefield. We scout around a little bit. We hang out with Lord Hien on the eve of battle. We get to have a little bit of drinks moment with Gosetsu, who, again, calm down, Gosetsu. Please, just stop acting so old. Stop talking about your death, please. We like you a lot. Yagiri, once again, hiding in a bush around the corner, but joins the party, and we get to have our big siege moment, where all of our characters, the Confederacy, the Peoples of the Steppe, and our own Doma Liberation Front, come together to assault the castle. And I loved all of it, except for one thing. I think Magni and Sadu are getting along a little too much in the air, and I really don't want to see those two get together. It's totally gonna happen though, because they have like opposing views, and it would be like this beautiful thing for the steppe, and like the peoples come together, and the war is finally over. Like it's so obvious, but oh no, don't do it, Sadu.
Sadu is too good for Magni. Like 100%. Magni is moonless.
He is moonless forever. Keep him moonless, game.
He's just the worst. Doma Castle is in contention for the coolest thing I've experienced in this game so far.
Oh, we even brought back the shellbacks. We had Soroban and like place bombs throughout the castle so they could flood it. So not only were we invading a castle overtaken by Garlean occupation, we got to see it in a moment of cleansing power as the rivers ran through it and hauled out all the pieces. It made for such a poetic atmosphere. As Gosetsu was complaining about destroying Doma Castle because it's this ancient thing that represents the people, and he ends like, no, the people represent the people. It was really solid. So when you went in there, you wanted to kick butt, and they let you. Like, you were going, fighting all the robots and everything throughout there. I am so excited about Robo Name Day.
It means more to destroy something that's important to you than to destroy something that's important to the enemy. To show your enemies the length that you'll go to. I mean, they went full salted earth. That's what I wanted to ask. Like, is it cleansing if you reduce it to rubble?
I don't know if they were expecting the extent of the rubbling that was going to be happening in the end.
That's fair. That's fair. It kind of destabilized things and maybe went a little further than you wanted to. But it was foreshadowed with Hien talking about, no, it's about the people, right? Like that is a bit of a foreshadow. It's just like, oh, there's not going to be much left at the end of this, is there? Including there's not going to be much Gosetsu left at the end of this, is there? This was such a strong set piece. I wasn't going into Doma Castle thinking I was going to be reminded of the Uncharted games, but this felt like a set piece out of Uncharted or a similarly operatic adventure game. This is Indiana Jones, this is Tomb Raider. This is like you're going in when things are at their worst. The city is crumbling around us as we're pushing through to defeat, well, eventually Name Day.
And it was a beautiful dungeon. There was a lot of effort put into these moments with the ceilings and the floors and the walls. And then someone had to come through and like mess it all up and break all the walls and make it look distressed and dirty. It was just from beginning to end, and then making your way into that throne room with robotic, augmented, hopefully Garlean super soldiers to come, or who knows, maybe Xenos himself is all augmented and super soldiery and more machine now than man underneath too. Wait a minute. Does this mean we're going to have Robo Gosetsu? because you could see it, right? Like
They didn't find the body.
yeah, with the one red eye and like the I don't mean to, my friends. I can't stop it. He's got like chainsaw arms.
Maybe I don't. Yeah, right. Like I wasn't 100% sure Papalimo was dead. Now we get that he is.
Yeah, he seems really dead. Yeah.
But why have a scene where our Kojin buddy comes back and's like, I went looking, I couldn't find the body. Why even put that in there if it's not a red herring, right? Like the fact that they even bothered putting that in there makes me think it's important for later. Unless the entire thing was to just make us sad that we can't even have a proper burial for our friend, but they didn't seem to hit with any additional sadness as a result of that information being delivered than the sadness that was you and your crew were already experiencing.
I mean, they went pretty far. Like first him catching the ceiling and we're all like, no, it's fine. We'll stay with you. And then he gets shot, bleeding out the mouth. You know, he's not looking good. The whole castle comes down on top of him, but I'm still going to hold out hope.
But also, like, you know, name day, we don't know the extent. Like, we just know he was corrupted in a horrible way.
Well, he didn't explode either. And the last corpse that we hung out by was in Alexander, and that one got up, the goblin leader. So,
oh, you're right.
Does everyone explode when they die? I guess not, because they left the body out in the desert in the steppes. So there's definitely bodies. Yeah. There's bodies throughout. Yeah. So there are bodies. Not everyone. Maybe monsters just explode, or maybe monsters that were infused with Ascian power explode more.
I mean, we fight a lot of Magitech in A Realm Reborn. I think that's why there's so many explosions.
So no, should have double tapped name day.
I mean, what is a roof coming down on top of you if it isn't a double tap?
I'm sad Gotsetsu's gone. He was the motivating factor outside of hanging out with Yugiri for this whole expansion, but he proved himself to be superfluous, and that was well written. Like, Hien has all the qualities and joy of Gotsetsu without the reservations or the misunderstandings, or just coming from another time that held him back.
Yeah, I mean, Gotsetsu represents Doma's past, and Hien represents Doma's future. And so, yeah, it's like this death hit me hard. I'm really sad. Gotsetsu, probably my favorite character of Stormblood. His death isn't as tragic as Haurchefant's to me. I mean, Haurchefant's young. Haurchefant is this force for optimism and hope, right? Like, Haurchefant represents hope, and he's cut down in a selfless moment. Whereas Gotsetsu, like, he represents this past, and he represents a warrior with a life well lived and with a history. Like, he embodies, it's not the age, it's the miles, right? But he has both. He has the miles under his belt as well as years. And it's through his character and through, spending our time with him, he time and time again just put himself in harm's way. Like, he was looking for that warrior's death, and he finally got it.
Well, and he saved all of us too, not just Hien. And that was a moment where Yotsuyu pulled out the gun and fired, and Hien cuts the bullet in half in a great shot with great animation. Just, he takes care of himself. That is absolutely a cheat moment where Gotsetsu could have been like, no, my prince, like jumped in front, caught the bullet, and it would have been so cheap because Hien has to become the king, the leader. He has to show he's grown up and can take care of himself.
It's such a good fake out, right, too? Because it put me in this false sense of security. Like, oh, yeah, we're just going to have a happy ending. We won. And then the literal ceiling comes down on top of us. And so that, too, to me is just like, damn effective storytelling. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and it literally hit Gotsetsu like a ton of bricks. So I'm gonna miss his character. I have reservations that he's absolutely gone for good. I'm with you. Seeing what the Garleans are capable of doing and twisting people into with the final boss of Doma Castle. I have my reservations that Gotsetsu has gone for good, but if we see him again, I don't think it's going to be a good thing. It was a long haul. Like, up to this point, I was like, okay. Like I was looking forward to disagreeing with a lot of the popular opinion when it comes to Stormblood. I was looking forward to being like, no, I'm super into this slow burn. And if I'm being honest, it did get me. Like there were multiple points where I felt impatient with the pacing of the story, and there were characters that I didn't love the most. But damn if there's not power in the slow burn. We still have so much Stormblood to go, but this is the moment where it feels like, and we're off. Here's the story that Stormblood is here to tell. And I don't think Doma Castle would have landed with the impact that it did, zero pun intended, were it not for that extreme slow burn of an opener. I could sit here, cause I'm a dork, and armchair write a more efficient version of this story, but I don't think I need to.
Now it's up to the game to bring all that energy back to Eorzea and the Alamegan plight, and make Ralgur's Reach and its resistance interesting. Are we going to roll in with a bunch of Doman forces and there's going to be disagreement? Are we going to have to re-inspire the people? Will our actions overseas inspire them enough that it's all moving forward? There's many ways they could take this, but all the characters are in place, and now we've seen the game fight back against true occupation, prolonged occupation of 25 years. Now we need to go assault the base that's rather new and on the border. And I'm really interested to see how Xenos is going to play into that, how active of a role he's going to have in that countermeasure versus the people, because, you know, he grabbed the hair. He said, do this or else, and now he's failed. Is he going to become unhinged? Is he going to do the scar on my face, how could you, I'm a beautiful person thing? Or is he going to keep the character, which I hope, and just revel in the glory of the battle of a finally great opponent? And maybe hop himself up a little bit on augments just in case.
Yeah, I love, like I said the last time we talked Stormblood, Xenos just feels Star Warsy to me. We meet Vader in A New Hope, right? He's on the top of the world. He's at the height of his power. His empire is untouchable. And by the end of A New Hope, we get to Empire Strikes Back, to the end of Return of the Jedi. Vader is on the back foot. It's proven that the Empire can bleed. And that's where it feels like we're at right now in Stormblood. Like, we've actually dealt a blow. Yotsuyu is dead. Probably. Doma Castle is destroyed, and the people of Yanxia are in open rebellion alongside other forces in the east. What does Xenos do when he's on guard? All we know at this point, because you and I haven't played further, all we know is he's going back to Garabania, which means, sounds like we're probably going back to Garabania. But what's he going to do? What's his next tactical step? It's probably not going to be great for our heroes. Make sure you like and subscribe, ring the notification bell, folks. We upload every Wednesday morning, and we stream every Monday afternoon and Thursday evening. Keep an eye out for additional streams spinning up soon. I'm on Twitter at GarrettArt, Kyle's at Kyle Ferguson, and until next time, GG.